They are life-changing, life-saving. When I had my brain injury, if it wasn't for BPC 157, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have gotten my life back together because that actually allowed me to heal nerve damage in my brain. Okay, everyone, welcome to another one of my solo sods here at Victory Men's Health. It is good to be back home. I have spent the last month or so traveling to Melbourne to give a speech for the Trinitas Trade Expo on testosterone and men's health, and then I flew across to the Silverback Summit in Orlando to speak on the VIP day with some advanced clinical topics and ran a workshop on that, and then spoke on the main day on anxiety as well. It was an awesome event to see not only the patronage double. I mean, there was almost 300 people at the event this year, which was absolutely amazing, and Ali did an incredible job putting it on. But it was also amazing to see that of the new people who came, the vast majority were practitioners and clinic owners. So it was fantastic to speak to so many clinic owners, practitioners, physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, everyone from all kinds of different ranges. The entire, not entire, but a huge chunk of the team from Marek Health were also there. I got to have a great chat with a huge number of their new young health coaches, which is phenomenal to see so many passionate, professional young people coming into the industry, but also upskilling in such an incredible way. However, one of the things that always slaps me in the face when I go to America and speak, last few years I've spoken to the Olympia. I wasn't able to do it this year due to timing, but one of the things that kind of always floors me, and it's because I'm kind of in my echo chamber of my colleagues and the people who I work with, but it always blows my mind just how low the standard of average care is across not just clinics in America, but globally. There are things that I've been speaking about for years and my colleagues have been speaking about for the same amount of time, if not longer. Things like, more frequent injections. And I'm not even talking about daily injections. I just mean even twice or 3 times a week. Understanding how side effects may not be resolved or caused by a broken aromatase system. Things around thyroid, pregnenolone, DHEA, fertility, stuff that I kind of maybe have kind of put into the rear view mirror because I've spoken about them so much. But what I have come to realize is that a abysmally low standard of care is the norm in this industry. So the topic I wanted to do for today's video is kind of like a recap of that trip in terms of, if you watch my TRT masterclass, you will see a very long and in-depth video which teaches you everything you need to know about TRT so that you can see the green flags in someone who you would want to manage your treatment. So I want to talk about what the red flags are today. And I'm not going to be able to cover every single red flag, but I am going to cover the ones that I think are the most prevalent in December 2025. That some of these are, have been around for many years, but there are definitely some new ones that I think are worth discussing. So the first one that I want to get out of the way is the number one red flag is avoiding the burger, fries, and a Coke scenario. And this is something that I have affectionately coined relating to the combo deal of the 1 ml of testosterone cypionate or enanthate per week with usually 1/4 milligram of anastrozole twice a week and typically 500 IU of HCG twice a week, or something within the ballpark of that. This is the fries and the Coke model from McDonald's. So for people who aren't aware, McDonald's actually have a very small markup on the burgers, or sandwiches you call them in the US, but the fries and the Coke are so cheap that they're essentially free. And so the profit margin on these is enormous, which is why you're always upsold to make it a combo or a meal or whatever they're calling it these days. When you're looking at a TRT clinic, it is much more profitable for a clinic to have 100 patients on 3 medications than 300 patients on 1 medication because there's less overheads and effort involved. So when you find a clinic that is giving you additional ancillaries that aren't indicated as a default, this is a red flag. And what makes it more of a red flag is if a clinic is giving you tadalafil and glutathione or melatonin and some carnitine. Okay. Ideal? No. But giving medications like this that are so directly impactful on the outcome of the treatment and potentially will cause side effects and a very strong impact on the entire endocrine system, this is a red flag, because a lot of the time these medications are sold with fear as the lever to drive the sale. So in marketing, one of the most effective sales strategies is to create a problem you didn't know you had and sell you the solution. And fear, we know very well, actually shuts down blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, which is what allows you to have executive function and basically regulate impulse control. So if a clinic salesman on the phone says, hey, if you don't take HCG, you're going to become infertile, and if you don't take anastrozole, you're going to grow boobs, that may be something that you go, okay, this is a problem I didn't know I had. These are things I'm afraid of, so I'm just going to not think it through and I'm overwhelmed, I'm bamboozled, I just say yes. And this is a big problem, because these protocols, like I can guarantee, actually I can't guarantee because there are exceptions to every rule, but I would bet a very good amount of money, and I am not a gambling man, that if anyone listening to this was to go out and inject themselves once a week with 200 milligrams of testosterone and take the 1/4 milligram of anastrozole twice a week and the 500 IU of HCG twice a week, that they would feel much worse on that protocol than a proper, stable, high injection frequency testosterone protocol that is optimized to their individual correctives. So that is red flag number one. Red flag number two, and these are now in no particular order, by the way, is a very limited blood test for the diagnosis of a testosterone deficiency. I see a lot of people online being like, do I qualify for TRT? Will I get a TRT script with these levels? And the answer is typically yes, because you will find a clinic that will give you testosterone as long as your levels are not high. Is that going to lead to the positive optimal outcome that you're hoping to achieve and actually achieve the expectations that you have? Probs not. Maybe. Definitely would for some people. But is the balance of probability in favor of you having an optimal outcome in that scenario? No, it's not. If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below. So having a minimal blood test basically only assesses, do you tick the box for a medically, legally prescribed testosterone prescription? What it does not do, if they're just looking at testosterone levels, maybe a red blood cell count, maybe lipids, something like that, maybe white blood cells, that doesn't tell you anything about what's going on with that person's health. And I mean, that person could have just, had a couple of beers and a Big Mac for breakfast and tanked their levels. But because you're not measuring other markers, you wouldn't know that they weren't fasted. You wouldn't know that they'd ingested a bunch of garbage because you're not looking at the proper panel. So a comprehensive assessment is needed to accurately not just diagnose a deficiency, but understand, is this deficiency coming from something? And is the something that the deficiency is being caused by something that we can resolve? Or is it something that is stubborn that can't be fixed, but is going to require considerations or ancillaries or some kind of mitigation of side effects because of how this is going to impact the TRT? Also, what a clinic should be doing is working with you on not just your TRT protocol, but optimizing your overall health. So having a look at the entire blood work panel, as well as a detailed conversation or questionnaire with all the details of your lifestyle, is really important, because if someone's lifestyle is garbage, you can optimize their TRT protocol to the nth degree, and they're not going to feel the way they want to feel. So it's so important in getting the actual outcome that people are hoping to achieve is to do a comprehensive assessment to diagnose, not just looking at a couple of blood markers on a couple of pages. So that's red flag number two. Red flag number three, and this is a bit of a new one. It was kind of a thing in 2024, but definitely a big thing in 2025, are clinics that will just shove peptides down your throat. Peptides are a class or type of, I wouldn't even call them medications, because it's a peptide. It's a string of amino acids. But most of the peptides, if not all of the peptides being prescribed by clinics, are technically research chemicals. Now, there are nuances here. BPC 157 is endogenously produced. Thymosin alpha-1, for example, comes from the thymus gland. There are absolutely nuances and exceptions there. But the important part to understand with this is that in the way that these medications and peptides are being prescribed, they haven't actually been assessed for safety and efficacy in human models in these dosing protocols, aside from thymosin alpha-1 for certain conditions. But that's not typically something prescribed here. So peptides are incredible. For certain use applications, they are life-changing, life-saving. When I had my brain injury, if it wasn't for BPC 157, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have gotten my life back together because that actually allowed me to heal nerve damage in my brain. BPC 157, other peptides, incredible when used in a targeted, dose-appropriate situation for a specific condition that is actually relevant to the mechanism of action of a peptide. What I see these days are peptides being given as just like add-ons to say, oh, your IGF-1 levels could be higher, here's some ipamorelin. Oh, you're not recovering well from the gym, here's the Wolverine stack. Here's the BPC and the TB500 to help you recover faster from the gym. This is a red flag because these peptides are not suitable for this application. Now, the ipamorelin thing for boosting growth hormone, if that individual actually has lower growth hormone levels, people need to understand that when you have low testosterone, your IGF-1 is always lower. So it does come up. Other things like alcohol and poor sleep will suppress that, but there could be an argument made for using ipamorelin to actually improve growth hormone levels if indicated. Real growth hormone is always going to be better, but there are specific cases for this. But it's when these clinics are just giving them to everyone for no reason or because you read about it on the internet and you say, hey, I want this, and they go, yep, no problem. That's a red flag. Because a lot of the time what you want and what you need are not the same thing. So it's very important that if you find a clinic that you want to work with, it's a clinic that's actually going to advocate for your best interest, not the best interest of their bank account. So be very careful with clinics that will just dish peptides out for absolutely no reason, or worse, will push them onto you because you need testosterone replacement therapy. Testosterone replacement therapy does not also cause you to have a deficiency in research chemicals and peptides. So that's red flag number 3. There's a few other red flags that I want to sprinkle in on top here that maybe I wouldn't say are more minor, but less significant than the ones that I just mentioned. The one that I'll kind of circle back on, and this does kind of come under red flag number 1, but it is a bit of a different point. Clinics that will necessitate the inhibition of aromatase purely based on the introduction of testosterone replacement therapy. So what I mean by this is that clinics that will, and I don't support using aromatase inhibitors, period, but the worst way that they could be used is simply giving them to everyone to preventatively or prophylactically prevent estrogenic side effects. If people want to argue for the benefit or use case of aromatase inhibitors, that discussion can be had, but the use case for them is not to give them to absolutely everyone preventatively. I think most people would agree that that is crazy. But the problem with this is that 1, you're getting sold medications that you don't need, but 2, you're basically guaranteeing that you're going to have problems with your treatment. So that is an enormous red flag. I hope that there are very few clinics still doing that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are a number that are still operating that way. The last red flag that I want to talk about is something that would probably come up early into the treatment. Just like a lot of things in life, things can seem, the cover of the book looks great, but if you get a few chapters in and the book's completely garbage, you should read something else. And clinics can be like this as well. You may have a fantastic onboarding experience with a clinic and they may have a bunch of great reviews and everything might be going really well. But remember that testosterone replacement therapy is a lifelong treatment. It's kind of like someone is performing surgery on you every day for the rest of your life. And because it is an ongoing dynamic intervention and your health is also dynamic, there are things that change over time, you really want to have a good, trusting relationship with the person who is overseeing this for you, because it is a big intervention. And you want someone in your court that you can trust and depend and count on. So if you get 6 months or a year into your treatment and you're finding that when you have questions, when you have queries, when you have concerns, that there is no way for you to actually receive support and care and guidance for this, this is something that you should also consider and say, hang on, maybe this isn't the right fit, especially within the first year. It is so important that there are regular follow-up appointments, and that these regular follow-up appointments are an opportunity for you to actually share what's going on and get guidance and feedback about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, what your blood markers mean, if there's anything you need to work on, and have all your questions and queries answered rather than you needing to go online and crowdsource that information. So the last red flag I will say, which would only kind of come into play once the relationship had already begun, in which case this would be when people would need to find a better option for them, is if they don't actually feel heard and supported in what's going on with their treatment. And sometimes people can be a little bit neurotic or a little bit anxious or a little bit much with their symptoms and with giving things time to work. And that may be something that the patient and client need to regulate on their own accord. But if you've gotten a year into your treatment and you don't really know what's going on with your health, you don't really understand your bloods, you don't really understand the timeline, you have a whole bunch of unanswered questions, that's something that you may want to consider to say, hey, maybe I need to find someone who can really make sure that I'm on the right track with this and that I feel safe and assured and comforted to know that I'm doing the best thing I can for my health. So those are my red flags of 2025. Thank you so much for your time and attention and getting to the end of the video, and I will see you all on the next one.
Many of the side effects that they experience when correcting this are due to the biological consequences of chronic inflammation. It's important to support and adjust the TRT and supplement protocol for the patient in terms of where they're at now, based on their different state of health at baseline. Daily injections actually do lead to a natural slight fluctuation in levels because of these pharmacokinetic peaks. So just like caffeine has a half-life of 8 hours, it doesn't have a gradual increase at up to 4 hours and then a gradual decrease in the desired effects.